It's October 10th, 1871, Philadelphia. For the first time in history, black men in Pennsylvania can finally cast their vote. A 32-year-old teacher named Octavius Catto wakes up early, puts on his finest suit, and prepares to exercise his new right. He walks to the polls with hope in his heart. He has fought his entire adult life for this very moment. This is his victory. But by sunset on this historic day, Octavius Catto will be dead, shot in broad daylight just 1 block from his own home. His killer will escape justice completely, and for the next 140 years, America will almost forget his name. But let's go back to the beginning. Octavius Valentine Catto was born free on February 22, 1839 in Charleston, South Carolina. His father William had been born into slavery but earned his freedom and became a Presbyterian minister in the Deep South. His mother Sarah came from the prominent D. family, one of Charleston's most respected free black families at that time. In 1848, authorities discovered a letter William wrote. They believed it could incite the enslaved population to rise up. A warrant was issued for his arrest. The Catto family had no choice. They packed their belongings and fled north to Philadelphia. Philadelphia was home to the largest free black population in America, but it was far from a paradise for people of color. Frederick Douglass himself called Philadelphia the most prejudiced northern city, yet it held the destiny of our people. Young Octavius attended segregated schools in the city, first Vaux Primary, then Lombard Grammar School for colored children. In 1854, he enrolled at the Institute for Colored Youth, one of the finest schools for black students anywhere in America. 4 years later, in 1858, Octavius graduated as the valedictorian of his class. He was just 19 years old at the time. The school immediately hired him as a teacher of English, mathematics, Greek, and Latin. He was a natural-born educator. But Octavius Catto was more than just a brilliant scholar. He was a leader, fearless and charismatic, born to change history. In 1861, the Civil War erupted across America. For Black Americans, this was not just a war. It was the fight of their lives. When Confederate forces invaded Pennsylvania in 1863, Catto immediately recruited one of the first black volunteer companies. They reported for duty at Harrisburg, ready to fight. But General Couch rejected them. Black troops were not yet authorized. Catto refused to give up. He joined forces with Frederick Douglass and the Union League to recruit black soldiers regardless. Together, they raised 11 full regiments of United States colored troops from the Philadelphia area. Thousands of brave men. Catto himself served with distinction as a major in the Pennsylvania National Guard, rising through the ranks during the war. But the battlefield was not the only place where Octavius Catto fought for equality. There were battles to fight at home, too. Philadelphia's streetcars were strictly segregated by race. Black passengers had to stand on the front platform in all weather. Black women were routinely thrown off the cars, sometimes violently, if white passengers complained about their presence. In 1865, Catto boarded a streetcar and simply refused to leave his seat. The conductor detached the horses and left him there. He sat in that abandoned car all night long. By morning, a crowd had gathered and reporters came to document the scene. Catto wrote a resolution that still echoes today. We shall never rest at ease, but will agitate until these usages cease. He lobbied Senators Thaddeus Stevens and William Kelly to pass a state law banning racial segregation on public transit. On March 22, 1867, Governor John Geary signed the bill into law. It was a historic victory for civil rights in Pennsylvania. 3 days later, Catto's fiancée, Caroline LeCount, was refused service on a streetcar by a conductor who ignored the new law. She called the police. The conductor was arrested and fined $100. The law had teeth, and she proved it worked. A historian later wrote that Caroline LeCount did almost the same thing as Rosa Parks, but her streetcar was powered by horses. Catto was not just a brilliant activist and educator. He was also a talented athlete who excelled at both baseball and cricket. In 1866, he co-founded the Philadelphia Pythians, one of the very first organized all-black baseball teams in American history. On September 3rd, 1869, the Pythians played the all-white Olympics. It was the first interracial baseball game ever recorded. But Catto's greatest and most dangerous fight was for something even more fundamental: the right for black men to vote. As the secretary of the Pennsylvania Equal Rights League, he led a tireless statewide campaign to ratify the 15th Amendment. On March 30th, 1870, the 15th Amendment was finally ratified. Black men in America had won the constitutional right to vote. In April of that year, Catto organized a massive celebration parade through Philadelphia. Thousands of black men marched proudly. But this new political power terrified the Democratic Party machine. Their control depended heavily on Irish immigrant votes. Irish and black communities competed fiercely for the same low-wage jobs and the same crowded neighborhoods. Tensions ran deep. In 1871, Philadelphia held a crucial mayoral election. Republican William Stockley faced Democrat James Biddle for the office. Black voters were expected to vote overwhelmingly Republican, Abraham Lincoln's party. They could easily swing the entire election. Democratic ward leaders developed a simple but brutal strategy: suppress the black vote through intimidation, violence, and fear. October 10th, 1871. Election Day finally arrived. Octavius Catto woke early at his home at 814 South Street in Philadelphia. He walked to his local polling place and cast his ballot without incident. Then he went to work at the Institute as usual. By midday, reports of violence began flooding in from across the city. Black voters were being attacked at polling stations. Within just a 2-block radius of Catto's school, 4 black men were beaten, shot, or killed that morning and afternoon. Catto dismissed his students early that afternoon. He was genuinely worried about their safety on the violent streets outside. Around 3 o'clock, Catto began walking home. He had no way of knowing that a killer was waiting for him on those streets. It was 3:30 inches the afternoon. Catto was walking on South Street between 8th and 9th, just 1 block from his front door. He passed 2 white men on the street. One of them was Frank Kelly, a known operative for the local Democratic Party machine. Without any warning, without a single word being spoken between them, Kelly pulled out a pistol and aimed it directly at Catto. He fired. The bullet struck Catto in the body. Catto staggered backward, clutching desperately at his wound, trying to flee. Catto stumbled toward nearby police officers who were stationed on the street, desperately begging them for help and protection. Kelly fired again, and then again. He shot Catto multiple times at close range, right in front of dozens of horrified witnesses. Octavius Catto collapsed into the arms of an approaching police officer. His blood pooled on the cobblestones of South Street. Octavius Valentine Catto was dead. He was just 32 years old. He died on the very day he had spent his life fighting for. Let that satisfactorily sink in for a moment. He fought his entire life for the right to vote. He was killed the day he used it. Frank Kelly fled immediately into the Irish taverns of Moyamensing. His friends and allies hid him there until he could escape. Within days, Kelly had slipped out of Philadelphia entirely. He made his way to Chicago, where he would hide for years to come. News of Catto's murder spread like wildfire across the city. The entire black community of Philadelphia was devastated by grief. City officials announced that Catto would receive a full military funeral. The city itself would pay for the entire ceremony. On October 16, 1871, Philadelphia held the largest funeral it had witnessed since the procession for Abraham Lincoln himself. The funeral procession began at 7 in the morning at the city armory on Broad and Race streets in a cold, drizzling rain. More than 5,000 mourners lined the streets that morning. They stood silently in the rain, weeping for their fallen hero. Students, professors, politicians, soldiers, and preachers marched together, both black and white, united in their shared grief. Mourners came from across the nation, from Delaware, from New York, from Washington, and even from as far away as Mississippi. Caroline LeCount, his fiancée, watched the procession in silence. She would never marry. She would carry his memory forever. Catto was buried at Lebanon Cemetery. Years later, his remains were moved to Eden Cemetery in Collingdale, Pennsylvania. But what about justice? What happened to the man who murdered Octavius Catto in cold blood in front of dozens of witnesses? For 6 long years, Frank Kelly lived freely in Chicago under a false name. He called himself Charles Young and hid in plain sight. In 1877, police finally tracked him down and arrested him. He was extradited back to Philadelphia to stand trial for murder. The trial began in April 1877. 6 eyewitnesses, 3 black and 3 white, positively identified Kelly as the man who fired, but the jury was all white, working-class men who sympathized with Kelly. After 8 days of testimony, the verdict: not guilty. Frank Kelly walked out of that courtroom a free man. Nobody was ever held accountable for the murder of Octavius Catto. This happened in America, in Philadelphia, in the city that calls itself the City of Brotherly Love. Let that irony sink in. In the years immediately following his death, Catto was remembered and honored. Schools and fraternal lodges bore his name. Caroline LeCount renamed her school the Octavius V. Catto School in his honor. She taught there for nearly 50 more years. But as decades passed, something strange happened. Catto's story began to fade from memory. History books simply forgot him. Why was he erased? Some historians believe it was no accident. Black heroes were systematically removed from American memory. As Malcolm X once observed, the pages have been ripped out of the history books on purpose. This was deliberate erasure. For 140 years, Philadelphia had no public monument to Octavius Catto. The city he died for forgot him. The city has over 1,700 public statues and monuments. Not a single one honored an individual African American. In 2007, volunteers placed a new headstone on Catto's grave at Eden Cemetery. It bore a simple inscription: "The Forgotten Hero." In 2010, 2 journalists published a book called Tasting Freedom. It was the first comprehensive biography of Catto ever written. When Philadelphia's mayor Jim Kenney read the book, he asked a simple question: "How in God's name did I not know this man?" The city launched a fundraising campaign to finally build a memorial. It would take years of effort and millions of dollars. On September 26, 2017, 146 years after his murder, Philadelphia unveiled a 12-foot bronze statue of Catto. It stands at City Hall, the first public statue in Philadelphia's history honoring an individual African-American citizen. The sculpture is called A Quest for Parity. It shows Catto stepping forward toward a 19th century ballot box, his right. Today, that statue has become a gathering place for a new generation of activists fighting for justice and equality in America. During the Black Lives Matter protests of 2020, demonstrators gathered at Catto's statue. His legacy lives on in their struggle. Voting rights remain under attack today. Voter ID laws, gerrymandering, poll closures. The fight Catto died for continues still. His words still echo across the generations. We shall never rest at ease, but will agitate and work until justice is won. So here is the question we must ask ourselves. How many other heroes like Catto are still waiting to be remembered by history? If this story moved you, share it with others. Octavius Catto spent his life making sure voices were heard. Now do your part. Octavius Valentine Catto, born free in 1839, died fighting in 1871, finally remembered in 2017. His story will not be forgotten.